Get out!
The cashier didn't even lift his head from the counter. He pointed toward the door, as if shooing away a stray dog.
Excuse me?
The black man muttered.
Are you deaf too?
The cashier finally looked up, his gaze sweeping from the dusty boots to the paint-stained hoodie. His nose wrinkled.
You stink. You're disgusting. Look at you. You look like you just crawled out of a trash can.
He leaned forward, his voice full of hatred.
Get your filthy self out of here before you ruin my customers' appetite.
The diner fell silent. The ragged man didn't flinch.
I just want a table, please.
The cashier sneered.
Someone call the police if he doesn't leave.
What he didn't know was that the man he had just humiliated would make him kneel and beg for forgiveness. But before we get to that moment, let me take you back to the beginning of that Saturday, before the insults, before the police, before everything fell apart. Irvine's Southern Table sat on the corner of 5th and Monroe in a mid-sized town just outside Nashville, Tennessee. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't trying to be. It was the kind of place where the screen door creaked when you walked in, and the smell of hickory smoke hit you before your foot crossed the threshold. The booths were red vinyl, cracked in places, patched with tape in others. A vintage jukebox near the back wall played Otis Redding on a loop. The kitchen was open. You could see the cooks moving behind the pass-through window, flames jumping from cast-iron skillets. The clatter of ceramic plates and the hiss of frying catfish were the soundtrack of every lunch rush. The place had been open for 12 years. 12 years of feeding families, hosting birthday parties, and putting out the best cornbread in the county. Every Thanksgiving, the diner fed the local shelters for free. Every first Saturday of the month, it hosted a youth mentorship breakfast. Kids from the neighborhood sitting across from business owners, teachers, firefighters. On the wall near the kitchen, there was a framed black and white photo. A young black man shaking hands with the city mayor on opening day. The photo was slightly dusty, easy to miss. Nobody on the current staff had any idea who the man in that picture was. That man was Bryant Irvine. And on this particular Saturday morning, Bryant was not in a boardroom. He was not in a suit. He was across the street, standing on a ladder inside a gutted building, the future second location of his restaurant. He had been there since 6 a.m, taping drywall seams, checking plumbing, arguing with a contractor about cabinet measurements. His jeans were streaked with white dust. His boots were caked with dried mud. His old gray hoodie had a rip near the collar and a smear of primer across the chest. Bryant Irvine was worth more money than most people in that town would see in a lifetime. But you would never know it by looking at him. That was the point. See, Bryant had a habit. Every few weeks, he'd visit one of his locations, unannounced. No phone call ahead, no suit, no entourage, just him, dressed like any other working man, walking through the front door to see how his staff treated regular people. He believed you could learn everything you needed to know about a business by watching how it treated someone who looked like they had nothing. Today was supposed to be one of those visits, a quick stop for lunch, maybe a sweet tea and a pulled pork plate, then home to shower and watch the game. Simple. Now, inside the diner, behind the register, stood Dustin Caldwell. Dustin was 28, white, hired 2 months ago, just promoted to shift supervisor, a title he wore like a badge of honor. He had taken a black marker and written supervisor under his name tag in block letters, like he was branding himself. He was loud. He snapped orders at the kitchen staff. He talked over the waitresses. He liked the sound of his own voice a little too much. But here's what mattered. Dustin had a pattern. Sheila Brennan, one of the waitresses, had noticed it from his first week. When white customers walked in, Dustin smiled. He greeted them warmly. He made small talk. When customers of color walked in, something shifted. The smile disappeared. The service slowed. Orders got forgotten. His tone turned cold, clipped, condescending. Sheila had reported it once to the previous manager on duty. Nothing happened. No write-up, no conversation, nothing. And Dustin had never, not once, met the owner. He told coworkers the owner was probably some corporate guy sitting in an office in Atlanta. He said it like it didn't matter, like whoever owned the place was irrelevant. He had no idea that the owner was about to walk through the front door in paint-stained jeans and a torn hoodie and order lunch. Bryant stepped through the front door of Irvine's Southern Table at exactly 12:15. The screen door creaked behind him. A wave of warm air rolled over his face, thick with the smell of hickory smoke, fried catfish, and fresh cornbread straight out of the oven. The lunch rush was alive. Nearly every booth was full. The jukebox hummed Sam Cooke from the back wall. Plates clattered. Ice clinked in sweet tea glasses. Waitresses moved between tables with trays balanced on their palms. It was Saturday, the busiest day of the week, and the diner sounded exactly the way it was supposed to. Bryant held the door for an elderly couple coming in behind him. The woman smiled and thanked him. Her husband gave a polite nod. Bryant smiled back, warm, easy, unhurried. He stepped aside for a young mother carrying a toddler on her hip, waited until she passed, then made his way toward the front counter. That's when Dustin Caldwell looked up from the register. And everything changed. Dustin's eyes locked onto Bryant the way a guard dog locks onto movement behind a fence. His gaze started low, the mud-caked work boots leaving faint prints on the tile floor. Then it moved up, the dust-streaked jeans torn at one knee, the old gray hoodie with a long smear of primer across the chest, and a rip near the collar. By the time Dustin's eyes reached Bryant's face, his expression had already curdled into something cold and hard. Bryant reached the counter. "Afternoon. Table for one, please?" Dustin didn't respond. Not right away. He just stared. A long, deliberate silence, like he was deciding whether this man even deserved a response. Then he turned to Sheila Brennan, the waitress standing beside him, and said, loud enough for the nearest booths to hear, "Sheila, you smell that?" Sheila froze. The coffee pot in her hand tilted slightly. She said nothing. Dustin turned back to Bryant. His voice was flat, bored, like he was reading a script he'd already memorized. "All the tables are reserved." Bryant glanced over his shoulder. 3 empty two-tops sat by the window, silverware already set. A freshly wiped 4-top near the jukebox had its chairs still pushed out. A booth in the far corner was completely untouched. "Those look open to me," Bryant said. "Did I stutter?" Dustin leaned forward on the counter. "I said reserved. For actual customers. People who made reservations." "Since when does this place take reservations?" There was a sign on the front door, red letters on a white background. "Walk-ins welcome. No reservations needed." Bryant had designed that sign himself 12 years ago. Dustin's jaw tightened. He had no answer for that. So he did what people like him always do when the logic runs out. He got louder. "Look, I don't know what hole you crawled out of today, but this is a family restaurant. These people paid good money to sit here and enjoy their food." He waved his hand toward the dining room. "They don't want to look at—" He paused, eyes dragging over Bryant one more time. "Whatever this is." A woman in the nearest booth set down her fork. The man across from her shifted uncomfortably. The diner was getting quieter, table by table, like a candle flame being smothered. Then the front door swung open. A white couple walked in. Pressed khakis, clean polo shirts, sunglasses perched on their heads. Dustin's entire body language changed in an instant. His spine straightened, his jaw relaxed. A bright, welcoming smile spread across his face like he'd been saving it. "Hey, welcome to Irvine's. Table for two? Right this way, folks." He grabbed two menus from behind the register and walked them straight past Bryant, so close his shoulder nearly brushed him, and seated them at one of the reserved window tables. He pulled out the woman's chair for her. He asked if they wanted sweet tea or lemonade. He laughed at something the man said. Bryant stood at the counter and watched every second of it. His expression didn't change, but his hand, resting on the countertop, pressed down slowly, fingertips whitening against the surface. The only sign that something beneath all that calm was starting to burn. Dustin strolled back to the register, still smiling from the pleasant exchange. The smile vanished the moment his eyes landed on Bryant again. "You're still here?" "I'd like to speak with a manager," Bryant said. Dustin crossed his arms and leaned against the back counter. "You're looking at him. I'm the manager on duty, and my decision is final." "Then I'd like to be seated. I have money. I want to eat." Bryant pulled his wallet from his back pocket. He placed a crisp $50 bill on the counter, flat, deliberate, centered between them. No aggression, no drama. Just a man proving, clearly and calmly, that he could pay. Dustin looked at the bill, looked at Bryant, then laughed, a short, ugly sound through his nose. "Money doesn't fix what you are, buddy." He pushed the 50 back across the counter with one finger, like it was contaminated. "You could put $1,000 on this counter. You're still not eating here. Not today. Not ever." The diner had gone completely silent. The jukebox had faded between songs. The kitchen grill hissed in the distance. Every pair of eyes in the room was fixed on the counter. Sheila Brennan stepped forward. Her voice was small, but it was there. "Dustin, I can seat him. There are open tables. I'll handle it myself." Dustin's head whipped toward her so fast she flinched. "Did I ask you?" His voice dropped, low, sharp, dangerous. "Did I ask for your opinion, Sheila? You pour coffee. That's your job. So go pour coffee. Table 6 is waiting." Sheila's hands shook around the pot. She looked at Bryant. A single second of eye contact, an apology she couldn't say out loud, then turned and walked away. A teenage girl sitting in a booth near the back had been watching everything. Without a word, she picked up her phone, opened the camera, and held it up. The small red recording light blinked on. She didn't try to hide it. Bryant took one slow breath. He looked at Dustin, not with anger, not with pleading, with something heavier, something tired. "I have every right to be here. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't caused a disturbance. I am asking you, respectfully, to let me sit down and eat." Dustin held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he reached behind the register and pulled the diner phone off the wall. He held it up so Bryant could see it. A performance, a threat made visible. He dialed 911. "Yes, I need police at Irvine's southern table, 5th and Monroe." His voice was calm, rehearsed, almost cheerful. "I've got a man here who's refusing to leave. He's becoming aggressive. He's been threatening staff. I don't feel safe." Bryant's hands hung at his sides, open, still. He had not raised his voice once in the entire exchange. Every word Dustin spoke into that phone was a lie, and at least a dozen people in that room knew it. The old man at the counter shook his head slowly and muttered something under his breath. A woman in a booth near the door pulled her young son into her lap. The teenage girl in the back adjusted her phone angle, making sure the frame caught everything. Bryant said nothing. He turned, walked to an empty chair near the entrance, and sat down. He rested his hands on his knees. He folded them together. He looked straight ahead. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't leave. He just waited. And somewhere beneath the calm, beneath 12 years of building something from nothing, beneath the patience he had taught himself as a young black man surviving in spaces that never wanted him, something old and deep and heavy pressed against his chest. Not anger, something worse. The understanding that no matter what he built, no matter what he earned, no matter how much of this world he owned, to some people, he would only ever be a black man in dirty clothes who didn't belong. It took less than 4 minutes. The first thing Bryant heard was the siren. Faint at first, just a whisper buried under the hum of Saturday traffic. Then it grew, louder, closer, swelling through the afternoon air until it swallowed every other sound on the block. Inside the diner, conversations died mid-sentence. A child at a booth near the window pressed his face against the glass and pointed. Then came the lights. Red and blue, sweeping across the diner's front windows in slow, heavy pulses. The color bled over everything, across the checkered curtains, across the framed photos on the wall, across the faces of every customer who had just watched a man get refused service for the color of his skin. 2 squad cars, sirens wailing, for one man sitting quietly in a chair by the door. The engines idled at the curb. Doors opened with heavy metallic thuds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boots hit pavement. The sharp crackle of a police radio cut through the entrance before any officer stepped inside. A woman at the window booth pulled her curtain shut with trembling fingers. A mother at a nearby table gathered her 2 children closer, wrapping her arms around them like a shield. The front door swung open hard enough to rattle the bell above it. Officer Dale Whitmore walked in first. Mid-40s, wide shoulders, thick neck. His right hand rested on his belt, not on his weapon, not yet, but close enough that the message was clear. His eyes swept the diner in a single practiced pass. He wasn't looking for facts. He was looking for the problem, and he had already decided what the problem looked like. Dustin rushed toward him like a man who had been holding his breath and could finally exhale. "Officer, thank God you're here." His voice was high, breathless, his hands moving fast. "That's him, right there." He pointed at Bryant, finger fully extended, arm straight, like he was identifying a suspect in a lineup. "He's been threatening me, refusing to leave. I don't feel safe." Whitmore looked in the direction Dustin was pointing. Bryant was sitting in a chair near the entrance, hands folded in his lap, back straight, feet flat on the floor. His posture was the quietest, calmest thing in the entire building. Whitmore walked toward him, each step heavier than it needed to be. "Sir, stand up." Bryant looked up. "Officer, I'd like to explain. I said stand up." Bryant rose, slowly. He kept his hands open, palms forward, arms slightly away from his body. Not because he'd been told to, because he knew. He had learned the choreography a long time ago, the specific, careful way a black man must move when a police officer is standing in front of him. "Officer, I came here for lunch," Bryant said. "I asked for a table. I was refused service. I have not threatened anyone. I have not raised my voice." Whitmore's expression didn't change. He didn't nod. He didn't acknowledge a single word. "ID," he said. "I'm going to reach into my back pocket," Bryant said. He moved slowly and pulled out his wallet, removed his driver's license, held it out. Whitmore took it between 2 fingers, glanced at it for barely a second, and slid it into his own shirt pocket. "Step outside with me." "Am I under arrest?" "Step outside." Bryant held the officer's gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Every pair of eyes in the diner followed him. The jukebox had gone silent between songs. The only sounds were Bryant's boots on the tile, the creak of the screen door, and the low static hiss of the police radio on Whitmore's shoulder. The teenage girl in the back booth adjusted her phone. The red recording light hadn't blinked off once. Outside, the sun was high and brutal. Heat radiated off the sidewalk in visible waves. The squad car lights were still spinning, red, blue, painting the storefronts in slow, repeating strokes. A couple on the opposite sidewalk stopped mid-step. A man in a parked truck rolled down his window. Across the street, two construction workers from Bryant's own renovation site stood near the scaffolding, staring. They were watching their boss, the man who signed their paychecks, being escorted out of his own restaurant by police. They didn't call out. They didn't move. They just stood there, frozen in the helplessness of witnesses who don't know what to do. Whitmore positioned Bryant beside the squad car, facing the diner's front windows. Every customer inside could see. "I'm going to conduct a pat-down, for my safety and yours." "On what grounds?" Bryant said. "I'm not armed. There's no probable cause." Whitmore stepped closer, close enough that Bryant could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You can cooperate," Whitmore said, his voice dropping low. "Or this can go a very different way. Up to you." Bryant looked at him. Then he turned around. He placed his palms flat on the hood of the squad car. The metal was scorching, heated by hours of Tennessee sun, and the burn bit into his skin immediately. He didn't flinch. Whitmore patted him down. Shoulders, arms, sides, waist, pockets, legs, all the way to the ankles. Every movement was slow, deliberate, theatrical. This wasn't a search. This was a performance. A public ritual designed to make one man small and the other powerful. Through the diner window, customers watched. Sheila Brennan stood near the kitchen pass-through, a rag clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were wet. Whitmore found nothing. No weapon, no drugs, a wallet, car keys, a cell phone with a cracked screen protector. That was everything Bryant Irvine carried. Whitmore keyed his shoulder radio. "Dispatch, requesting a check on a Tennessee DL." He read the number out flat. Then he leaned against the squad car and waited. "You been drinking today?" Whitmore asked. "No." "Any controlled substances?" "No." "You sure? You seem agitated." "I'm not agitated, officer. I'm answering your questions." Inside the diner, the second officer, younger, early 30s, was leaning against the counter chatting with Dustin, not interviewing him, not writing anything down, not asking a single question about the alleged threats, just talking. Dustin was smiling, gesturing with his hands, relaxed and loose. He looked comfortable, satisfied, like the world was unfolding exactly the way he believed it should. The radio crackled. Dispatch came back clean. Bryant Irvine. No warrants, no priors, no arrests, no misdemeanors, not a single parking ticket. The cleanest record the officer had heard all week. Whitmore listened. His mouth tightened. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not guilt, but a brief flicker of recalculation. The math wasn't adding up. But he didn't apologize. He didn't walk back inside and question Dustin's story. He didn't check the security cameras. He didn't ask a single bystander what they saw. Instead, he made a decision. "All right, look." He lowered his voice like he was doing Bryant a personal favor. "I'm going to let you go. No charges. But my advice? Walk away. Go home. Don't let this turn into something bigger than it needs to be. Bryant stared at him. Let me go? I haven't done anything to be let go from. I hear you, but the situation is what it is. What is the situation exactly? Bryant's voice hadn't risen, not by a single degree, but something had shifted underneath, a pressure building behind each word. I came here to eat. I was refused because of how I look. You searched me without cause. You never asked the man who called you a single question. And now you're telling me to go home? Whitmore straightened to his full height. I'm advising you, for your own good, to walk away. The two men stood facing each other on the hot sidewalk, squad car lights still spinning, sun pressing down. A small crowd had formed across the street, 8, maybe 10 people. Someone had their phone out, recording. Bryant didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ball his fists. He stood exactly where he was, a man built from patience and stone and something the officer could not break. And he refused to disappear. Then a black SUV turned the corner. It moved slowly, too slowly for someone in a hurry, too deliberately for someone who didn't know exactly where she was going. The tires crunched against the curb and stopped directly behind the second squad car. The engine cut off. A beat of silence passed. The driver's door opened. Renee Irvin stepped out. She was dressed in a charcoal blazer over a cream blouse, tailored slacks, heels that clicked sharp against the pavement. She had come straight from her law office downtown. Her phone was still in her hand. Bryant had sent her a single text 15 minutes ago. 3 words. They called police. She didn't rush. She didn't run. She walked, measured, controlled, each step landing with the precision of a woman who had spent her entire career making sure every word and every movement counted. Her eyes found Bryant first, standing beside the squad car, dust-covered clothes, hands at his sides, calm but tired. Then her eyes moved to Whitmore, the badge, the belt, the hand still resting near his hip. She read the entire scene in under 3 seconds. Her expression didn't shift to sadness. It shifted to steel. She walked directly to Whitmore, not to Bryant, not to the diner, to the officer. She stopped 3 feet in front of him, close enough to hold a conversation, far enough to command it. Officer, my name is Renee Irvin. I'm an attorney. She didn't blink. What is the probable cause for detaining this man? Whitmore's posture changed immediately, a subtle straightening, a slight step back. The word attorney hit different than anything else he'd heard in the last 20 minutes. Ma'am, we received a disturbance call. That's not what I asked. I asked for probable cause. Has this man been charged with anything? No, but has he committed a crime? There was a report of threatening. Has a single witness confirmed that report? Whitmore's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Renee continued without waiting. Has this man been read his rights? Has he been placed under arrest? Is he free to go, yes or no? The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough for Whitmore to feel the ground shift under his feet. He's free to go, Whitmore said. Then he is also free to enter any public establishment he chooses. Renee's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Including this one. She turned toward the diner, looked at the sign above the entrance, the hand-painted letters arching across the awning, the same font Bryant had chosen 12 years ago. Irvine's Southern Table. She turned back to Whitmore. Officer, do you see the name on that building? Whitmore looked up at the sign. His lips parted slightly. Irvin, Renee said. That's my last name. That's his last name. She gestured toward Bryant. This is my husband, Bryant Irvin. He is the founder and sole owner of this restaurant. He owns the building. He owns the lot your squad car is parked on. He owns every table, every chair, and every inch of floor that your cashier just told him he wasn't welcome to stand on. The color left Whitmore's face like water draining from the sink. He looked at the sign, looked at Bryant, looked back at Renee. His mouth moved, but no words followed. At that exact moment, a silver sedan pulled up behind Renee's SUV. Terrence Sullivan, Terry, stepped out. White, mid-50s, graying at the temples. Regional General Manager of Irvine's Southern Table. 15 years working for Bryant. He had gotten Renee's call while driving and broken every speed limit between his house and the diner. Terry walked straight to Whitmore. I'm Terrence Sullivan, Regional GM. Everything she just said is correct. Bryant Irvine is the sole owner of this establishment and 4 others across the state. I report directly to him. Whitmore took a slow step backward. His hand finally dropped from his belt. The second officer appeared at the diner's front door. He had heard the commotion. His face went pale the moment Terry pointed at Bryant and said, "That's my boss." Bryant hadn't said a word through any of it. Now he moved. He straightened his hoodie, the torn, paint-stained, primer-smeared hoodie, and walked past Whitmore, past the squad cars, past his wife and his general manager, and through the front door of his own restaurant. The screen door creaked behind him. Every head in the diner turned. The room was frozen. Forks in midair. Glasses halfway to lips. The jukebox had gone quiet between songs. The kitchen had stopped. No sizzle, no clatter, nothing. Just silence so thick you could hear the ice shifting in someone's glass. Terry followed Bryant inside. He stood near the register and said, in a voice loud enough to reach every corner of the room, "For those who don't know, this is Bryant Irvine, the founder and owner of this restaurant." Dustin Caldwell was standing behind the counter. His face moved through stages. Confusion first, like a man hearing a language he doesn't speak. Then disbelief, his eyes darting between Terry and Bryant and back again. Then, slow, creeping, unstoppable, raw fear. The blood drained from his cheeks. His customized name tag, the one with "Supervisor" written in marker, suddenly looked like a joke. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Bryant looked at him, not with fury, not with triumph, with something quieter and far more devastating. "You told me I didn't belong here." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. The whole diner held still, balanced on the edge of whatever was about to happen next. Dustin's mouth finally found words. They came out cracked, uneven, stumbling over each other like a man running on broken legs. "Sir, I had no idea who you were." His hands were trembling. He gripped the edge of the counter to hold himself steady, knuckles turning white. "I swear I was just doing my job. I thought you were... I was trying to protect the business, that's all. I didn't mean..." "You thought I was what?" Bryant's voice was low. Not a shout, something worse than a shout. The kind of quiet that presses down on a room and makes every person in it hold their breath. "Finish the sentence," Bryant said. "You thought I was what?" Dustin couldn't finish it. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. His eyes swept the room, searching desperately for a sympathetic face, an ally, someone who might step in and save him from this moment. He found no one. Every customer was watching him with the silent, unblinking stare of people witnessing a man who has just walked off a cliff and hasn't hit the ground yet. I I was following procedure, Dustin managed. There's a policy about... No. Terry Sullivan stepped forward, his voice hard and flat as a closed fist. There is no such policy. There has never been such a policy. This restaurant has a written non-discrimination code. You signed it with your own hand the day you were hired. I have your signature on file in my office. Dustin had nothing left. No excuse, no defense, nothing to hide behind. Bryant took one step closer to the counter. Not aggressive, not threatening, just close enough that Dustin had nowhere to look except directly into the eyes of the man he had just tried to throw away. You didn't refuse me because you didn't know who I was, Bryant said. Every word was slow, measured, placed like a nail driven into wood. You refused me because I'm black, because my clothes were dirty, because you looked at me and decided, in 3 seconds, that I was less than you, that I didn't even deserve to sit down and eat a meal. The diner was silent, not a fork moving, not a glass clinking, not a single breath loud enough to hear. You're done, Bryant said. Take your things and leave this building. Dustin didn't argue. His shaking fingers unclipped the name tag from his shirt, the one he had customized with supervisor and black marker, the one he had worn like a crown every single shift. He placed it on the counter. The small plastic click echoed through the room like a gavel. He turned, walked through the kitchen past cooks who stood frozen at their stations, past the dishwasher who refused to meet his eyes, and disappeared through the back door into the empty parking lot. Bryant turned toward the entrance. Officer Whitmore was still standing inside the door. He had watched the entire thing unfold, and now he stood with the rigid stillness of a man who has just realized he picked the wrong side of a story that is going to follow him for a very long time. Bryant walked toward him. Officer, a man told you I was aggressive and threatening. You believed every word. You didn't interview a single witness. You didn't review the security cameras that I installed in a building that I own. You searched me on a public sidewalk without probable cause. Then you told me to go home. Whitmore stiffened. I was responding to a disturbance call, sir. You were responding to a lie, Bryant said, and you never once stopped to check whether it was the truth. Renee stepped in behind Whitmore. Her voice was flat, precise, built for courtrooms. Officer Whitmore, this incident was captured on 4 interior security cameras, at least 2 customer cell phones, and your own dash cam. I will be filing a formal complaint and requesting a full internal affairs review, covering the unlawful search, the failure to investigate the complainant, and the racial bias evident in every decision you made today. Whitmore said nothing. His younger partner appeared at his shoulder, face gray. They left without a word. The squad cars pulled from the curb with their lights off, no sirens, just the quiet retreat of men who understood that the mistake they had made was too large to explain away. As Whitmore stepped through the door, his eyes caught the framed black and white photo near the kitchen. A young black man shaking hands with the city mayor on opening day. Recognition flickered across his face. Too late. The teenage girl's name was Caitlin. She was 16 years old. She had been eating lunch with her grandmother when Bryant walked into the diner, and she had started recording the moment Dustin raised his voice the first time. She didn't post the video right away. She went home, watched it twice, then uploaded it to her social media page that evening with a single caption. This man was refused service at his own restaurant. Watch what happens. By midnight, the video had 200,000 views. By noon the next day, it had crossed 6 million. The internet did what the internet does. It moved fast, and it moved loud. The clip was shared across every major platform within hours. Comment sections exploded. Hashtags appeared. Hashtag Irvine's Diner, hashtag He Owns the Place, hashtag Dustin Caldwell, and trended nationally before the sun went down on Sunday. People dug, they always do. Screenshots of Dustin's personal social media surfaced within hours. Old posts with racially charged jokes, a comment thread where he mocked a former coworker's accent, a photo of him at a party making a hand gesture that left very little room for interpretation. Each screenshot spread faster than the last, and each one confirmed what the video had already shown, that what happened in that diner was not a mistake. It was a pattern. Local news picked it up first. A reporter from the Nashville affiliate stood outside Irvine's southern table on Monday morning, the restaurant sign filling the frame behind her. By Monday evening, national outlets were running the story. The headline was everywhere, worded slightly differently each time, but always carrying the same weight. Diner owner humiliated and searched by police in his own restaurant after employee calls 911. Bryant and Renee gave one interview. Just one. They sat side by side in their living room, Bryant in a clean button-down shirt, Renee beside him with her hands folded in her lap. They were calm, measured. They didn't sensationalize. They didn't shout. Bryant said something during that interview that would be quoted in articles and shared across social media for weeks afterward. He said the most painful part of the experience was not being refused service. It was not being searched on the sidewalk. It was knowing that the same thing happens every single day to people who don't have their name on the building, people who don't have an attorney standing beside them, people who simply walk away because they're tired, because no one is recording, because they have learned that fighting back costs more than staying silent. That quote was shared over 400,000 times in 48 hours. The local district attorney opened an investigation into Dustin Caldwell's 911 call within 3 days of the video going public. The case was not complicated. The diner's 4 security cameras captured every second of the encounter from multiple angles. Not once did Bryant raise his voice. Not once did he make a threatening gesture. Not once did he touch anyone or move aggressively toward the counter. The footage was unambiguous. Every word Dustin had spoken into that phone was a fabrication. Filing a false police report in Tennessee is a Class A misdemeanor, but the DA's office, under significant public pressure and guided by the clear racial motivation captured on camera, pushed further. Dustin was charged with filing a false report and with a civil rights violation under state law. His court date arrived on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks later. He showed up in a borrowed suit that didn't fit right, standing beside a public defender he had met twice. The courtroom gallery was packed. 3 news cameras lined the back wall. Dustin pleaded no contest. The judge, a woman in her early 60s with a reputation for measured, precise sentencing, delivered her ruling without hesitation. 18 months of supervised probation. 200 hours of community service, mandated specifically at a civil rights education center. A $5,000 fine. A permanent mark on his criminal record. Before she dismissed the case, the judge leaned forward and spoke directly to Dustin. She told him that using law enforcement as a personal weapon against another citizen because of the color of their skin is not a workplace error. It is not a lapse in judgment. It is an abuse of public resources and a violation of the foundational rights that every American is guaranteed. She told him that the court hoped the next 18 months would teach him something that 28 years had apparently failed to. Dustin left the courthouse through a side door. He did not speak to reporters. The consequences for Officer Dale Whitmore arrived through a different channel, but they arrived just the same. The department's Internal Affairs Division launched a formal review within 72 hours of the video's release. They reviewed the dashcam footage from both squad cars. They reviewed Whitmore's body camera, which confirmed everything the civilian recordings had already shown. They reviewed dispatch logs, radio communications, and the complete timeline of the encounter. The findings were damning. Whitmore had conducted a search without probable cause or consent. He had failed to independently verify the complainant's claims. He had not interviewed a single witness. He had not reviewed available security footage at the scene. He had advised the victim to leave rather than investigating the person who had made the call. Whitmore was suspended without pay for 30 days, effective immediately. Following the suspension, he was demoted one rank and required to complete a 40-hour training program focused on civil rights law and de-escalation techniques. His personnel file was flagged for review in any future promotion consideration. The younger officer, the one who had spent the entire encounter leaning on the counter, chatting with Dustin like they were old friends, received a formal written reprimand for failing to independently assess the situation. The police chief held a press conference the following Thursday. He stood behind a podium, flanked by department leadership, and acknowledged publicly that the officers' handling of the incident had failed to meet the standards the community expected and deserved. He announced department-wide implicit bias training, a new protocol requiring officers to verify complainant claims through available evidence before taking enforcement action, and the creation of a civilian oversight board to review racial profiling complaints. Renee Irvine filed a federal civil lawsuit against the police department on Bryant's behalf. The suit did not seek monetary damages. Bryant didn't need the money. It sought systemic reform. After 4 months of negotiation, the department entered into a consent decree requiring mandatory body camera review protocols, independent civilian oversight of all complaints involving racial bias, and quarterly public reporting on use of force statistics broken down by race. The second officer's reprimand was included in the public record. Every consequence was documented. Every action was recorded. Nothing was left open. Nothing was left to interpretation. 1 month later, the screen door at Irvine's southern table still creaked the same way it always had. The jukebox still played Otis Redding on Saturday afternoons. The smell of hickory smoke and fresh cornbread still hit you the moment your foot crossed the threshold. The red vinyl booths were still cracked in places, patched with tape in others. The kitchen still hummed with the clatter of cast-iron skillets and the steady hiss of catfish dropping into hot oil. But something had changed. You could feel it the moment you walked in. Something in the air. Something in the way the staff moved, the way they greeted every face at the door. Not because they had been told to, but because they understood now what it meant when someone wasn't greeted at all. The diner was busier than it had ever been. Not because of the viral video, not because of the headlines or the hashtags or the news cameras that had parked outside for a week. Because the community had decided, loudly, clearly, with their feet and their wallets and their presence, that this place mattered. That what it stood for mattered. Families who had been coming for years brought friends who had never visited. People drove in from neighboring towns just to eat a plate of pulled pork and sit in the room where a man had stood his ground and refused to be erased. A group of local business owners began holding their Monday morning meetings in the back booth. A church youth group made it their regular Sunday lunch spot. On weekday mornings, a retired couple came in at 7 sharp, ordered black coffee and biscuits, and sat by the window reading the newspaper in comfortable silence. Bryant established the Irvine Open Door Fund, a scholarship and small business grant program for young black entrepreneurs in the restaurant industry. He announced it at the diner on a warm Thursday evening, standing near the counter, surrounded by staff, family, neighbors, and a handful of reporters. He kept his remarks short. He said the fund wasn't about what had happened to him. It was about making sure the next generation of black business owners had one fewer door to push open alone. The first round of applications opened the following week. Over 300 people applied in the first 5 days. Sheila Brennan was promoted to shift supervisor. She accepted the role quietly, without ceremony, without fanfare. When a local reporter asked her about that Saturday afternoon, she paused for a long time before answering. She said she wished she had spoken louder. She said she wished she had stepped in front of the counter instead of stepping back. She said she carries that moment with her every day. And she said that from now on, every single person who walks through the front door of this restaurant will be treated like they belong. Because they do. The framed black and white photograph, the one of a young Bryant shaking hands with the city mayor on opening day, the one that had hung near the kitchen for 12 years collecting dust, overlooked by every employee who had ever passed it, was taken down, carefully cleaned, placed in a new frame, and mounted right beside the entrance, where every customer would see it the moment they walked in. Next to it, a small wooden sign was hung on the wall. Hand-painted, simple. Everyone is welcome here. So here is my question, and I mean this. I actually want your answer. If you saw this happen, not to a millionaire, not to a man whose name was on the building, but to someone who had nothing except the clothes on their back and their dignity, what would you do? Would you record it? Would you speak up? Would you step between them? Or would you look the other way and tell yourself it wasn't your problem? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to read every single one of them. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it. Send it to somebody who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story is just a story, but sometimes a story is a mirror, and what you see in that reflection might just change the way you move through the world tomorrow. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We tell stories like this every single week. Stories where the truth comes out, where justice actually shows up, and where the people who think they're untouchable learn the hard way that they are not. Because at the end of the day, a man walked into his own restaurant and was told he didn't belong. And the only person who didn't belong was the one standing behind the register.
After this story, one thing stuck with me. The way you treat someone who can do nothing for you, that's who you really are. Not how you treat your boss, not how you treat rich people, not how you smile at someone who with a nice suit or big wallet. That's easy. Everybody's nice when there's something to gain, but the person with dusty boots, the person with torn hoodie, the person who look like they have nothing to offer you, that's the test. And most people fail it every single day without even knowing. And here's the thing, you never know who's watching. You never know who's standing in front of you. But that's not even the point, because of it shouldn't matter who they are. You should treat people right, whether they own the building or sweep the floor, whether they are CEO or dishwasher, whether they can do something for you or not. Because character isn't how you act when people are important. Character is how you act when you think nobody's important. And that version of you, the one that comes out when nobody's watching, that's the real one. So ask yourself tonight, how do I treat people can do nothing for me? Be honest. The answer tells you everything. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, respect everyone, not because of who they might be, because of who you are.